Greetings everyone, this is Leon Blight and today I'm bringing you a deck tech for blue-white control in Standard, specifically in Kamigawa Standard right now. So at the time of recording this video, we are a month and a week into Kamigawa Standard and the meta is very healthy. There's good representation across all archetypes, although predominantly we are in somewhere around more of an aggro-centric meta. However, there's room for some good mid-range and control strategies. Specifically, as I am a blue-white control enjoyer myself, I was looking for an existing blue-white control archetype in Standard, and I was able to find one. It's a very underrepresented archetype in the meta right now. Last I checked, being only around 3% of the play shares in the meta. However, the win rate and its competitive viability is actually pretty high. So this specific deck that we're looking at, or the one I'm using right now, was not created by me. It was created by Lukas Dusec. He created, playtested, and engineered this deck for quite a while since Kamigawa Standard, and across all ladder performance checks as well as tournaments, his iteration of blue-white control in Standard has the highest win rate. So I am simply um, adopting it and using it for myself. And I did not make any edits, as of course I would not try to even edit the most successful um, iteration of the deck in Standard. So I just want to showcase what's in the deck, why it's in the deck, the sideboard, and some of your gameplay flow as well as your matchups. All right. So first, let's identify what's in the deck. Let's start with the spot removal. So for spot removal, we have first of all March of Otherworldly Light. It's an X and a 1. It can you can exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less. So if you're trying to exile a token which has mana value 0, you can simply pay the 1 white and you will successfully exile a token. If you are trying to exile anything more, so mana value X, you simply just have to pay that X amount of mana more. It also has the benefit of the additional ability, which allows you to exile any number of white cards from your hand in order for the spell to cost 2 less to cast. That means to say that if you're trying to exile um, an artifact, creature, and enchantment that's mana value 2, you can just pay the 1 white and then exile a white card from your hand in order to successfully do so. So it's a pretty efficient card, um, and it can scale, so that's decently relevant. But it only scales well to low to mid cost permanents that it can target. So yeah, that's a good card coming out of the new set Kamigawa. Next one we have is Fateful Absence. One in a white. It's an instant as well. Destroy target creature or planeswalker relevant that it can kill planeswalkers. Its controller investigates, which just simply gives them a colorless token, clue token, which two in a sack, you draw a card. Um, Apart from traditional spot removal, this offers your opponent a token which allows them to draw. So instead of doing a 1 for 1, it technically gives your opponent a 2 for 1 in favor of your opponent due to the clue that it gives them. However, um, in a in a format currently in standard where the meta is really fast, it's okay to be able to answer your opponent's board right away. And if the game goes later on, you're the control deck. The further on the match goes, usually it goes slightly to your favor. So it's once again an effective removal, and its drawback of giving a clue isn't as bad as it is. All right. The next one we have also kind of bundle up with spot removal, although this card is really strong. It's a classic card. Tale as old as time. We have Valorous Stance. One and a white instant. It has two modes. The first one being a target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and the second mode being destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. Both modes in our use of blue-white control are relevant because we have some creatures that we want to protect, as well as us being able to destroy most of the time our opponent's creatures with toughness 4 or greater. So it's a good flexible card, and it's that strong that it's being used not just in control archetypes, it's also used in almost every deck that can run the color white right now. So it's a good card. All right. Now for our sweepers, we have four of Doomskar. Now Doomskar is our current standard staple for Wrath of God. It's one mana more, being three and white white, so it's a 5 mana sweeper, but it has the upside of being able to foretell. So if you pay 2 mana, you can exile the card face down, and you can pay in the future for its foretell cost, which is one and a white white. You can sweep the board. So in the current meta, this is very relevant because if you have this in your opening hand, on turn 2, you can foretell this, flip it down, and then on turn 3, you'd have the option for a wipe. Um, so yes, Doomscar is pretty strong, so it's basically our standard sweeper. And in Kamigawa, we are introduced with a new sweeper, also very strong. We have Farewell, which is a 4 and a white white. You have four modes on the card. It's a sorcery. Um, You may choose one or more, so you have the ability to choose all. You can exile artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and graveyards, all modes of which are extremely relevant in the current standard meta. So, uh, it's a strong card. It bypasses death triggers, it exiles artifacts and enchantments, which are very prevalent in standard, as well as graveyards. So, exiling is good. Having the modes are good. Sometimes you might just want to choose one or two, what have you, applicable in the current situation. Um, it's just a little steep on the cost, so we don't want too many of these. Two is a good amount to have. All right. So that's what we have for sweepers. Now for counter spells, we have two of Disdainful Stroke. Pretty straightforward. It counters target spell with mana value 4 or greater. And we have Negate, which counters any non-creature spell for one and a blue. We have four of Jwari Disruption, which has been a powerhouse since its release, being a one and a blue front spell mode to counter any target spell unless its controller plays one. And if you need a land, it's a land. It's a tapped land for blue. So yeah, that's a Jwari Disruption. Now, for card draw, we have Memory Deluge, two of. It's a four. It's your typical 4 mana draw two, but actually better because it looks at the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of mana spent. So in the initial casting of the card from your hand, you'd pay four. So you look at the top four, and then you put two of them into your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library. And it has the very big upside of being able to flash back for 7. And it's an instant. So it's a Memory Deluge is the definitive powerhouse draw card for standard right now. Alright. Now for the rest of the cards in the main deck, these are your more mid-range cards which offer a lot of value. Not just for tempo, they can be like tempo, or they have the option to draw as well, so card advantage, and they have removal. So let's start from lowest mana cost. We have an extreme powerhouse workhorse of a card from Kamigawa. We have Reckoner Bankbuster, for which is a two generic artifact vehicle. It ETBs with three charge counters, And if you pay two and a tap, which you can do immediately because it is an artifact vehicle, it does not have a summoning sickness. You remove a charge counter and you draw a card. And if you do this successfully three times and you remove all charges, it creates a treasure token and you create a 1/1 pilot with the ability that it can crew vehicles as though its power were 2 or greater. Okay. So this card is really crazy. Um, y simply if as the control player you want to be holding mana up. So if you have this in play and you're just holding mana up for defensive spells, for removal or counters, and your opponent decides to pass, you have mana up, just pay to win a tap. You just draw a card. It's a free real estate. And if you manage to use up all three counters, you get a treasure token and you get the pilot, which is exactly what it needs to pilot itself. So it places card advantage in the early game, and mid to late game it serves as a win condition. So Reckoner Bankbuster really strong. Next one we have Restoration of Eiganjo. It's a two in a white enchantment. It's a saga. The first step, it tutors a basic planes from your deck into your hand. Very simple. Ensures you have a land drop. It thins your deck. So it's a good first mode. Its second mode is you may discard a card, and if you do, return target permanent with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This one is less relevant because if you look at our main deck, we only have Reckoner Bankbuster as a legal target for that effect. So the second step is it's more narrow to the context of this deck. But the third mode, when it flips into a creature, it becomes um, a fox monk. It's a 3/4 with vigilance, and whenever the Architect of Restoration attacks or blocks, it creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So if this goes uncontested, it has the ability to run the game, which most likely won't be the case because, of course, why would you not be contested? Um, So the first mode and the third mode are really strong. Um, it's a good card to stall with to get you through mid game, and it also ramps you. So it's a pretty strong two off, also from Kamigawa. Now this next card is another two two and a one white enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you put an invitation counter on it, and whenever it gains an invitation counter, you create a 1/1 white human creature token. And if it has three invitation counters, it transforms into an anthem, which gives all your creatures +1/+1. The mode of it, where if you attack with two or more creatures this turn, draw a card, is slightly narrow relative to this deck. So mostly you will just be gaining the 1/1 humans and less use of the one where if you attack with two creatures, you draw a card. But it can still have its uses sometimes. So it's okay to have that option. Just you have to keep that in mind. So it's another strong card to get you to get you through the mid game. It also serves as a win condition if your opponent for some reason cannot contest the 1/1s. You will have an eventual 3/2/2s on the board at the end of it, so it's a good value card to have. It gives you blockers and it gives you an anthem, which will prove relevant for our win cons later on. Okay, we have another powerhouse, Legion Angel. Who knew this card would make main deck in standard now? It's actually such a sleeper card. It's a 4 mana, 2 and 2 white Angel Warrior. It's a 4/3 flying, and when it ETBs, you may reveal a card named Legion Angel from outside the game and put it in your hand. Basically, you're able to tutor Legion Angels from your sideboard into your hand. Um, this allows you to put some of your main board space into your sideboard. Thus, it's a min-maxing of your deck size. So it serves as a very strong win condition. A 4/3 flying body is not to be scoffed at in standard right now. Um, it's a very strong card. So yeah, it's just a really good value engine. So that's a Legion Angel for you. It also serves as one of your win conditions. All right. Next to that, we have Starnheim Unleashed, which is just a one of. Its face value is that it is a 2 and 2 white. Create a 4/4 Serra Angel. And the 4 mana 4/4 Serra Angel is like decent at rate, but it has the mode of being foretold, and its foretell cost is XX and a white, where you create a X amount of tokens instead if you foretell this. So if you have this in the early to mid, if you need a blocker or a body right away by turn 4, you have that. This offers you that. But if you are able to foretell this and the game goes decently long, it's a scaling win condition basically, where you can dump all your mana late game and you just have a lot of 4/4 flying vigilance creatures. So yeah, um, it's it's either a late game win condition or an early body as a blocker or whatever you need for it. So good, good. All right. The next one is the powerhouse planeswalker from Kamigawa. We have the Wandering Emperor. 2 and 2 white. It's as flash, and if it enters the battlefield, if it ETBs for the turn, you can activate its loyalty abilities as though they were instants. So, being a control deck, what we most likely want to be doing with this card is spot removal. Meaning to say, on our opponent's turn, if our opponent taps to attack one of their creatures, we can flash Wandering Emperor in, use the -2 ability, which is to exile a target tapped creature, and we gain 2 life. So, that's a lot of value. And then, after that's done and the turn's passed back to you, you still have a Planeswalker to play with a +1 that puts a 1+1/+1 counter on up to one target creature. It gains first strike until end of turn, or you can -1 to create a 2/2 white samurai, with vigilance. So the Wandering Emperor is like really strong. It's spot removal. It's a 4 mana spot removal, but a planeswalker with that has the ability to run the game softly. It can soft lock you out of games. It's a must answer card as well. So it's a threat. Okay, never mind about soft lock, but like it's just it's a threat which can spot remove. So yeah, it's a good card basically for standard anyway. All right. Next we have Tefori. Teferi who slows the sunset, the namesake of which I've named this deck. He is two white and a blue, and his +1 ability, you may choose up to one artifact, creature, and land. And if those permanents are tapped, you untap them. If they are untapped, you tap them basically. So whichever it is, it will tap or untap the opposite of what its current state is. So it has offensive and defensive capabilities. Okay, and you also just gain 2 life on top of it. Its number two is card advantage, where you look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and rest into the bottom of your graveyard. It's a simple card advantage. And it's -7. You get an emblem. Untap all permanents you control during each opponent's untap step, and you draw a card during each opponent's draw step. You basically are allowed to uh, have your opponent's upkeep as well. You're allowed to untap and draw when your opponent does it. You often don't run into that effect, but you can. So it's there. It's the ultimate. Okay, just another mid-range value engine there. And finally, the last card, at least non-land card we have in the deck, we have Iymrith Desert Doom, which is just a 5 mana 5/5 flying dragon. So at rate, it's already up to par. It has the upside of having Ward 4 if it's untapped, so it's difficult to spot remove the turn it's played or when it's on a defense position. If you're holding it as a blocker, I mean. Um, and if you attack with it and it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And if you have fewer than 3 cards, draw cards equal to the difference. So if you have 1 card, you attack with it, it deals damage, you draw 2 cards. It basically draws you up to 3 cards. So if you have 0 cards, it attacks, it hits, connects, the trigger comes on, you go from 0 cards to 3 cards. So it's a mid-range win condition, basically. Okay, so let's move on to our lands first. We have two of Cave of the Frost Dragon. It's a man land. It's a win condition. It can block. Pretty straightforward. We have the legendary lands from Kamigawa. Um, First, we have Eiganjo, Seat of the Empire. You can play this like as plains simply if you play as a land. It comes in untapped, it taps for white. Otherwise, it has the channel ability where if you pay 2 and a white, you can discard the card. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, where it costs 1 less for each legend you control. So it's a land that if you draw late, it doubles as removal, or you can hold it as removal as needed. So for a legendary land, the one off, for a plains, the flexibility it provides you is very strong. The next one is another manland for blue, Hall of Storm Giants. This one is a very strong manland as well. Al- Almost all of the manlands from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms are. It is 5 and a blue to activate its ability. It turns into a 7/7 giant with Ward 3. So yeah. These two manlands are alternative win conditions as well as blockers. They are very strong. Um, we have the legendary land for blue in Kamigawa, and I'll skip to its channel ability right away. It's 3 and a blue. Discard the card. You may return target artifact, creature, or enchantment or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less for each legendary you control. Um, so if you draw it late, you can channel to use it and get another one of your good win conditions or mid-range engines back into your hand. Do note that it says return to its owner's hand, so do not target um, stuff in your opponent's graveyard because it will return to their hand instead of yours, and you do not want that to happen. Okay. We have four of Deserted Beach, of course. It's our the Slowlands. We have the Pathways, and we have two of Field of Ruin, which answers your opponent's manlands. So yeah. Let's try to identify the win conditions first. As a blue-white control deck, this isn't your pure control deck, where a pure control deck's win condition would be to make sure your opponent, your win condition in a traditional blue-white control deck is for your opponent to concede. That is not the case for this deck because we are running some good mid-range engines. Um, our win conditions can be within our lands, our manlands. We also have Imrith as a win condition. Our Reckoner Bankbuster serves as a win condition. Wandering Emperor, a softer win condition. Starnheim Unleashed as another one. Legion Angel also. These two aren't as much. They're more of support cards. They're soft win conditions. Wandering Emperor and our 3 mana enchantments are softer win conditions. You're looking more toward Angel, Unleashed, Imrith and your manlands to close out the game. So these get you there faster. Okay. So that's the deck. Let's talk about our sideboard now. So since we're running Legion Angel, automatically three of these will be also Legion Angel. We have two of Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, two of Hullbreaker. We have a fourth March, as we have three Sunset Revelries, and two Malevolent Hermits and two Test of Talents. Alright, so I'll tell you on which matchups we use for which. So, uh, generally, if you run into, uh, I'll categorize them by running into aggro matchups, your more aggressive mid-range matchups, and then there's your control matchups and your more control mid-range matchups. So I'll just classify them into two. So for the more aggressive matchups, you want to be boarding in your fourth March, your three Sunset Revelries, and that's it. And you want to be taking out your here you want to take out your Starnheim. Starnheim might would be too slow, and then you have the option of taking out depending on what specific aggro matchup you're against. You can take out some of the counter spells or the conditional removals, depending. Um, you can keep these for aggro. Mm, you can maybe remove one of these as well. Teferi might be too slow in an aggro matchup. You want to keep these as well as these. You do not want to remove these. So yeah. Okay. Now, if you're against a more control matchup, you want to be bringing in your Leers, your Hullbreaker Horrors. You you also want to be bringing in your Hermits and your Test of Talents. For aggro matchups, you could also bring in maybe uh one horror, but you'd have to remove one of your higher cost ones. But okay, that's one to look out for. Don't worry. As you play the deck, you'd be more aware of how to board the deck. So if you're against more control decks, controlly decks, you can opt out of your March, or you can remove these. Some of your Fateful Absence. You're inclined to keep your Valorous Stance. You're inclined to keep these. The rest of these you can keep. So you can take out one Farewell and one Doomscar, depending on which. So yeah, so that's about five, six, 7 cards. You'd bring in 8 cards. You can remove most of the spot removal and reduce your sweepers. Maybe reduce some of your more mid-range cards. But yeah, you you'd just you'd learn that on the fly. So don't worry. We'll have some games to demonstrate how I pilot the deck. Hopefully we get a better grasp of that. So yeah. And that's the entire deck. So it's blue-white control. It still has the traditional control elements there with a sprinkle of some mid-range elements. Uh, those pure value engines. The good thing about the control playstyle is that if both of you and your opponent is not doing anything, that's more beneficial for you because you in most matchups, um, you are the beatdown. Uh, oh no, sorry, your opponent is the beatdown, and you are more of the reactive player to the beatdown. So, uh, generally, you just want to be playing lands and pass. The traditional tale as old as time gameplay of land pass, and to eventually grind your opponent out of resources and move in with your win conditions. The good thing is, if you're in a slower matchup, or if your opponent is aggro and they're missing lands and they're not doing anything, you still have your very strong 3-drop enchantments to just run away with the game if you run into an awkward situation where either of you are doing nothing. If you're in a control to control matchup, you really want to be playing very dependent. I'll just showcase more of that in just gameplay. Uh, so that's all. Hopefully, I tackled everything there. And if you have any questions or whatever, feel free to comment, and I'll gladly answer any of them. So yeah. Big thanks again to Lukas Dusec for creating and engineering the deck. It's really fun. I've had a lot of success playing with it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Stay mythic, and I'm dabbing out. See you next time. Peace.